Quiet on set. Speed. And action.
I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart.
You know how to whistle, don't you? You just put your lips together and blow.
Welcome to the Foot and Friends on Film podcast, discussing everything about cinema. Now here's your host, Nick Baylor.
What's in the bar?
Houston, we have a problem.
You can't handle the truth.
I'll know what she said.
You're crazy.
Welcome to the official podcast of Foot and Friends on Film.com, where we discuss everything about cinema. I'm your host, Nick Baylor. It's episode number 4. I want to thank all our listeners who tuned in for the first 3. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You know, some names are synonymous with brilliant acting, and that's why today we're talking about Meryl Streep. Take your seats. Time for your feature presentation. We're talking about Meryl Streep today, folks. The iconic Meryl Streep. What can be said? Well, apparently a lot. That's why we're here. You know, I know a guy who's interviewed Meryl Streep and knows a thing or two about Meryl Streep. So without further ado, let's welcome John H. Foote. Tell us a bit about where Meryl Streep comes from.
Mary Louise Streep is her real name. She's a New Jersey girl, which is interesting. So is Jack Nicholson and Bruce Springsteen. You know, Jersey seems to breed icons. She was a legend in university before she landed on Broadway. Her work at Yale drew the attention of Broadway producers. They were coming to see her work. And she ended up in New York in a play called The Cherry Orchard for Joseph Papp. And in it, she played Dunyasha, which is a small, almost a throwaway part of a Russian maid. And I've seen The Cherry Orchard and worked on The Cherry Orchard. And Dunyasha, I hate to say it, but is almost a nothing role. And Streep turned it into a comic gem. She brought the house down every night in every performance as this goofy, klutzy maid. She made a slapstick and made it work. And Broadway was stunned. They watched this young woman and thought, who is this girl? This unique looking young woman. She's a genius. And it wasn't long before Hollywood was calling as well. And she started auditioning around Hollywood. Her first big audition was for King Kong, in which Dino De Laurentiis told her in Italian she was too ugly to play the lead, that Jessica Lange eventually played. And Meryl Streep responded in perfect Italian that he was a pig and she didn't want to be in the movie anyway. That was, that's kind of the beginning for her. She was eventually cast by Fred Zinnemann in a film called Julia. Before that, she had won an Emmy on television for Holocaust, the miniseries with James Woods, in which she was absolutely brilliant. And Zinnemann cast her in Julia opposite Jane Fonda. It was a very small part. Jane Fonda noticed immediately what she had. She saw that this woman was going to be the future of American cinema. And she gave her some tips about hitting her mark, making sure she was in the shot, and just do everything you're doing because it's perfect. And a star was born. She had a very small part in Julia, but she was noticed. Critics noticed her. They wrote about her. Pauline Kael wrote about Meryl Streep specifically. And it wasn't long before she was landing all the major roles in Hollywood.
Let's talk a little bit about her relationship with John Cazale.
It's a great love story because John Cazale was older than Meryl Streep when they met, I think 14 years. And he was already established as a Broadway actor. He'd been in an off-Broadway play called Indian Walks the Bronx with Al Pacino that was quite a success, and ended up in The Godfather as Fredo. And John Cazale's legacy in movies, he made 5 films. Every one of them was nominated for Best Picture. The Godfather Part 2, The Conversation, Dog Day Afternoon, and The Deer Hunter. And he and Meryl Streep met and fell in love, became lovers, and they were living together when Cazale was diagnosed with lung cancer. And EMI and Universal had trouble getting him insured for The Deer Hunter. He played Sal, and she mentioned it to Robert De Niro, and the insurance problems magically disappeared. And Streep has always believed that De Niro paid the insurance. and he was able to go off and make the film. He was very ill while he was making the film, and Streep was his caregiver. She was his caregiver till the last day he was alive. He literally died in her arms, and was the great love of her life, most people thought at that time. He did not live to see The Deer Hunter completed. He finished all of his scenes and went back to New York, she with him, and he passed away before the film was done. So, you know, the last great performance of his career, he never really got to see. But he had a profound impact on her career because he believed in method acting, hardcore method acting, as did De Niro, as did Cimino, everybody on The Deer Hunter. And Streep, although she doesn't prescribe to the Stanislavski method, she certainly believes in the truth of acting. Nothing's more important than the truth. And so his impact on her artistically was huge.
1979.
Banner year.
Yeah.
Banner year. She's nominated for an Oscar for The Deer Hunter, and a part that she wasn't very happy with. She thought her character was kind of a throwaway character. Michael Cimino was more concerned with the men and the lies he told in The Deer Hunter, the obscene lies he told making The Deer Hunter. But Streep was cast in 3 major films in 1979. The Seduction of Joe Tynan, written directed by Alan Alda, where she played his love interest. She had a small part as Woody Allen's ex-wife in Manhattan. She played an angry, bitter lesbian and was fantastic. She just jumped off the screen at you. But her signature role in 79 was Kramer versus Kramer, where she played Joanna Kramer, the wife who leaves Ted at the beginning of the film and her child, and comes back a year and a half later wanting custody of the child. And it becomes a very bitter court battle. And I think what a lot of people aren't aware of is that Robert Benton, the director, allowed Meryl Streep and Dustin Hoffman to write their own lines in the courtroom scene. He had written the script, and Streep came to him and said, I'm not sure she would say these things. And he said, improve it, go away, say what a woman would say. So she did. And those scenes, those courtroom scenes, are which she won the Academy Award for. She's brilliant. And what's terrific about it is that she leaves her son. I mean, she leaves her child. What kind of mother does that? But we come to understand that she was in trouble. She was in emotional trouble. And we can't hate her by the end of the film. And in fact, we like and admire her at the end of the film. And she won every acting award available to her that year, including the Academy Award for Supporting Actress.
And in 1981, she was nominated for Best Actress for the first time for The French Lieutenant's Woman.
Yeah, she moved on to the major category. I mean, everybody was saying this girl's going to be huge, and her conquest of Hollywood was so fast. I was in theater school when we first became aware of Meryl Streep, and from 79 to 83, she just went on a tear. 81, she's in The French Lieutenant's Woman, and it's a difficult period piece because it's partly set in the past, partly modern. And again, she had no trouble with it. And she's got that great iconic shot where she's at the end of the dock and turns. And we've got this pale, ethereal face looking at us. And it's just haunting. And she was nominated for the Oscar. A lot of people thought she'd win. She lost to Katharine Hepburn for On Golden Pond, which is questionable at best. But she was back next year, and she didn't lose the following year.
Let's talk about the following year. I believe I recall you in a classroom one day saying that this film, Sophie's Choice, is the finest acting performance ever caught on film.
I believe that. I do believe that. And there have been many. There's been Brando, there's been Duvall, there's been Day-Lewis, there's been Casey Affleck. But I think what Meryl Streep accomplished as Sophie in Sophie's Choice is astounding. I saw the film for the first time opening day on a Friday afternoon, and it was full. Everybody had read the book. Most people had the book in their hands when they were going into the film. And 2.5 hours later, stumbling out of that theater, barely able to walk, having seen what I had seen. It was just the most gut-wrenching, astonishing performance I've experienced in my life. And I've had experiences like that again, but never as powerful as watching Meryl Streep in that film. She plays a Holocaust survivor living in Brooklyn, and she's haunted by her past. And every now and then she reveals snippets of what her past was. Her father was a professor who supported Hitler, and she realized this when she was translating for him and was horrified. She ended up at a death camp at Auschwitz, and it turns out that her choice was having to choose which of her children would die. She was allowed to keep one because she was Polish. The other was sent to the death camp and was killed immediately. And we don't see that until the end of the film. And her appearance through the film, at one point, she's absolutely ravishing, sexual and beautiful. At another point, she's wasting away in this death camp. When she first comes to America in Brooklyn, she's still skin and bone and dying. She's anemic and she's going to die until Nathan gets a hold of her and helps her. She falls in love with a paranoid schizophrenic who is dangerous, murderously dangerous. And she and her writer friend Stingo eventually escape, but she goes back to him, and suicide's her only way out. She's walking the world with so many ghosts. She can't possibly live. She's really a walking ghost anyway. What marveled me was that Streep learned to speak Polish and German, and then learned how to speak those two languages in broken English for the film. And Alan J. Pakula, the director, wasn't going to cast her. He was looking at Goldie Hawn. He was looking at an international actress. And Jane Fonda got Meryl Streep a meeting with him, and he was won over. 1 hour with Meryl Streep, and she had the part. And she responded with a performance that won every award available to her that year. There was no point even nominating anyone else. It was that great a performance, and remains that great a performance.
I remember first hearing about this film in your classroom, and you described it very much like you just did now. And you spoiled the ending for me, but I won't hold it against you.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Silkwood, Out of Africa, Ironweed, A Cry in the Dark. I know that's a lot. Where to begin?
She had a great run after Sophie's Choice. She made Silkwood, the Karen Silkwood story, directed by Mike Nichols. Changed her look and her language again completely for it. She's an absolute chameleon, though she herself says she's more of a mimic, which is interesting. She followed Silkwood, which got her another Oscar nomination, with a box office disaster called Falling in Love with Robert De Niro, which was a surprise failure. You figure the two of them together would work, but it was just a dull love story that was boring on every level. Out of Africa is magnificent. Should have won her another Oscar as far as I'm concerned. It's a great romance, and it's one of those films that is carried entirely by a woman. Vivian Leigh proved in 1939 with Gone with the Wind, women can carry movies. And Streep carries this movie on her shoulders throughout. She is absolutely superb as Isak Dinesen, the great writer. She followed that with a little-known film called Plenty, which was the adaptation of the David Hare play, in which she was very good as a resistance fighter during the Second World War. But it opened and closed almost in the same day. It disappeared, despite some decent reviews. She then made another bust with Jack Nicholson called Heartburn, which had all kinds of production problems. Nicholson joined the movie the day before production started. Mandy Patinkin was supposed to play her husband, and it fell apart, so Jack Nicholson stepped in. And they just didn't have the chemistry. But they came back the next year with a film where they had brilliant chemistry in Ironweed. They were both nominated for Academy Awards as hobos in Albany in the 1930s. And Streep, again, is astonishing. Changes her appearance completely, her voice, her mannerisms, everything about her is uniquely different. And then a year later, she does it again in A Cry in the Dark, where she plays Lindy Chamberlain, the woman who was accused and convicted of killing her baby when she insisted that a dingo took the child out of the tent and consumed it. And she turned out to be exactly right. They found the remains years later, and she was acquitted. But her character was so unique in A Cry in the Dark because she wants no sympathy from the audience. She refuses to cry about her child. She won't give the audiences that. She won't give the courtroom that. She won't give them any hysterics or histrionics. She's, a calm, cool woman who is devoutly religious. And it's a stunning performance. She won the New York Film Critics Award again for Best Actress for this, was nominated for another Oscar. And I think it was by far the best performance of the year. I mean, she should have won 3 Academy Awards through the 80s, easily.
That brings me to my next question. Of all her nominations that she didn't win, what do you think in a just universe would be her total number of Oscars?
I think she deserved it for Kramer versus Kramer. She deserved it for Sophie's Choice. She should have won for Out of Africa. She should have won for A Cry in the Dark. She should have won for The Bridges of Madison County. Again, for adaptation. I believe she should have won for Julie versus Julia. And that's it. I don't believe she deserved it for The Iron Lady. I know why she got it, but I don't believe she should have won for that year. I think there were better performances. But I think she should have at least 6 or 7 Oscars.
With The Iron Lady, do you think it was sort of a collective? It's like we can't continue to just not give it to her.
Yeah, I mean, a whole generation of film goers. I think it was 26 years since she'd won an Academy Award. So a whole generation of moviegoers knew who Meryl Streep was, but they'd never seen her win an Oscar. And they thought that exactly. We can't keep nominating this woman and sending her away a loser. I mean, she's the greatest actress in the history of the movies, and she's one of the biggest losers in Oscar history, which makes no sense. You know, so yeah, they awarded her that for that. But it's interesting, the New York Film Critics gave her Best Actress that year too. And they don't play games, you know, they usually are spot on about who the best of the year are, in my experience anyway.
John, I'm getting some like knocking or shuffling noises on your end. Do you have anything near your computer's microphone?
No, it could be just I'm holding my computer. It could be that. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So now we're into the 90s. Postcards from the Edge, based on Carrie Fisher's memoir. One of her most famous roles, I think, is from The Bridges of Madison County. Talk a little bit about that.
It is. Postcards from the Edge was interesting because she was playing Carrie Fisher, essentially. And her chemistry with Shirley MacLaine was just crackling good. They were electrifying together. And I was always really surprised MacLaine wasn't nominated for an Oscar as well. Streep was. She deserved it. She's got a kick-ass scene at the end where she sings a country and western song with Blue Rodeo as her backup group and brings the house down. It's just a remarkable scene, and silenced a lot of critics that said, well, she can't sing. Well, yeah, she certainly can. She had a couple interesting films in between there. Death Becomes Her, which was a nice black comedy from Bob Zemeckis. But with The Bridges of Madison County, she really flexed her muscles as Francesca, the Italian war bride in Iowa, who encounters the National Geographic photographer played by Clint Eastwood. And when Steven Spielberg decided to back away from directing this, Eastwood jumped in and cast himself as Robert Kincaid. And they were talking about Jessica Lange, they were talking about Sigourney Weaver, they were talking about everybody except Meryl Streep. And Eastwood said, why don't we get the Best Actress in movies? Well, has no one thought of this? So they sent her the book. She didn't like the book, but she liked the script. And she had a meeting with Eastwood, and she really liked Clint Eastwood. And she has said since that working on the film with Clint Eastwood was one of the greatest pleasures of her career. She couldn't believe how fast he worked. She couldn't believe what a gentleman he was constantly on set, how prepared he was, and how prepared his actors were. And he often shot rehearsals. And she said that she's sometimes better in rehearsals than she is on the takes. So gave him even greater reason to shoot the rehearsals. And she responded with, I think, one of the top 4 performances of her career.
Talk about Meryl and Oliver Stone.
This was interesting because Meryl Streep was at the top of the list to play Eva Perón in the musical adaptation of Evita. Disney was going to produce it, and Oliver Stone was going to direct it. Oliver Stone wrote the screenplay. They based it on the musical by Andrew Lloyd Webber, and they did all the tests, and Streep was set to do it with Antonio Banderas. And she met several times with Oliver Stone, and they locked horns. They just did not get along. She didn't like how he bullied women. She didn't like how he bullied men. She didn't like how he bullied everybody. And she said, if this is going to be how it is on the set, I'm out. And he said, well, this is how I work. If you're out, you're out. So she quit. And Michelle Pfeiffer was brought in, and then Michelle Pfeiffer quit. And eventually Madonna did it. And the result was not a great adaptation of it at all. But Streep has nothing good to say about Oliver Stone. She has refused to work with him 3 times now. She has no interest in working for the man and has not a kind word to say about him.
And Stone mentioned that he didn't think she could do the singing. Is that correct?
He did. He did, and then brought her in and tested her, and of course she could do the singing. She sang "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina" to a group of friends at a dinner party with Oliver Stone in attendance, and brought the house down. And Stone's a loudmouth. He's a great director. He's a bombastic director, but he's also a loudmouth who says things that he shouldn't. And he said a lot about Meryl Streep that he shouldn't have said, and it cost him.
One of the most stunning things I saw Meryl Streep in was something where I didn't even realize I had seen her in it, and it's her performance as the rabbi in Angels in America.
Yeah, that was such a great series. Well, a long film, I suppose. Mike Nichols had hoped to do the film on screen, but I mean, they just couldn't do a six and a half hour film. So HBO stepped in and they said, "We'll do it." And Streep jumped in, and Al Pacino jumped in, and Meryl Streep plays 4 or 5 parts in the movie, and they all did that. Pacino being the only one that didn't. Emma Thompson has several roles. All the actors have different roles, but Streep at the beginning of the film plays an ancient rabbi, and then she plays a Mormon's mother, and she's absolutely superb throughout. Her best part, I think, in the film is as Ethel Rosenberg, the woman who was executed for spying in the 1950s, who comes to the bedside of a dying Roy Cohn and chides him and intimidates him and teases him until she finally treats him like a dying man, treats him with respect, and he laughs at her. And it was the look on her face when this monster laughs at her death is horrifying. And again, she won the Emmy, she won the Golden Globe, she won the Screen Actors Guild Award. Both she and Pacino were heavily decorated for their performance in this movie. The year before that, she'd had a great year, 2 films. She was in The Hours, which should have got her an Oscar nomination and didn't, and also Adaptation, for which she was nominated for supporting actress with Nicolas Cage, in which she played a writer who meets this crazy plant expert in Florida who's after this lily, this mysterious lily, and who grinds it up and snorts it, and it gives you a high. And she does it too. She gets high off this flower. And Streep was hilarious in the movie, and people forget Meryl Streep is really funny. I've interviewed her, and she's hilarious to talk to. She's got a dirty sense of humor, a nasty laugh. I mean, when she laughs, it's dark, and you wonder what is happening in that mind. And she was hysterically good in Adaptation, and richly deserved the Oscar nomination she got.
That's a brilliant film.
Mhm.
And she is brilliant in it. This brings me to a question. Can you recall Meryl Streep ever delivering a performance that was not good?
I've seen her weak. I saw her in a film called The House of the Spirits with Glenn Close and Jeremy Irons, and the script was dreadful. So they had really nothing to work with, and I would say that was a weak performance. I wasn't enamored with what she did opposite Jack Nicholson in Heartburn when I saw that for the first time, and I was disappointed with her work in The Prairie Home Companion opposite Lily Tomlin. But I mean, you can't hit it out of the park every time, and she's human. She's going to make weak movies. She made a film with Roseanne Barr that I can't imagine why she did it. It was called She Devil, and I wasn't impressed with that either. It was a comedy, but the most unfunny comedy I've ever seen.
How do you like Mamma Mia?
I hated Mamma Mia, but I know why she did it. She saw it with her daughters, and when they approached her about the film, she did it for her girls. And so I get why she did it. She has one great moment when she sings "The Winner Takes It All" at the end of the film on the cliffs overlooking the sea to Pierce Brosnan. She's spectacular, but it's a stupid movie and painful to watch. I mean, the sequel even more so. And I hate it. It was on my 10 worst list.
That one was painful for me. I actually don't even know if I made it to the end.
I think when Pierce Brosnan started to sing, I wanted to run for the theater doors. It was horrible.
Yeah, it was something else. But you know, she was good, and like she can sing, and
She can sing. She can sing. You're right.
She's picked up and strummed a guitar. She's done a lot of different things and committed to a lot of different roles and a lot of different accents.
Yeah. She learned to play the violin for Music of the Heart, but never played before. And when she was done, she was good.
There's a movie I really, really love called Doubt, which has Philip Seymour Hoffman and Amy Adams.
It's
Uh,
a powerful movie. It's a great play. It was written by John Patrick Shanley, who wrote Moonstruck years ago for Cher. And when it came to the screen, it was very well reviewed. Streep plays a mother superior who believes that a priest is molesting young boys, and she goes after him. She makes no bones about it. She goes after him. And at the end of the film, she finally admits that she has such doubts. But what are her doubts? Are they that he didn't do it? Are they about God? Are they about herself? We never really know what her doubts are about. And it's such a profound performance. And Amy Adams, man, she goes toe to toe with Meryl Streep, and she is equally good, right down to the final scene together. And that was a great movie. She was nominated again for that and deserved it. And that came on the heels of The Devil Wears Prada, where she again had a comedic role and again was wonderful and again was nominated.
Speaking of Amy Adams and Meryl Streep, Julia and Julia.
That was a curious movie, and when I heard the premise, I thought, well, they're not going to share the screen together. They're going to, each story is different, and I didn't really know what to think, but I went into it open-minded because it's Meryl Streep, and she was absolutely spectacular as Julia Child. I remember being at my grandmother's house and watching Julia Child on television doing her cooking show, and Streep nailed it. She nailed that loopy-sounding voice she had. Her strange movement. She was very tall. She was like 6'2", and everything about her was perfect. And again, the New York Film Critics gave her Best Actress. She was nominated again for Best Actress, and this is one where I think she should have won. And she's so good, and Stan Tucci is so good as her husband. It weakens the Amy Adams scenes. They just can't compare to what Streep and Tucci are doing. And while they were making that movie, Stanley Tucci's wife was dying of cancer, and Streep became a very good friend to him and a real source of support. Both she and her husband, Donald Gummer, were a huge help to Stan Tucci.
Who did she lose that Oscar to?
In 2009, you really want to know? Sandra Bullock.
I think I know.
Sandra Bullock in The Blind
Right.
Side. Yep.
Right.
And I like Sandra Bullock. She was great in Gravity, wonderful in Gravity, but for The Blind Side, no way. No way.
No, absolutely not. She was Julia Child. It was, so it wouldn't be the only time or the first time or the last time she played a real life figure who was iconic. And there were mutterings about an American actress playing Margaret Thatcher. And Meryl was cast, but did anyone ever really have any doubt that she would be able to pull it off?
I mean, it's like an Irish actor playing Abraham Lincoln,
Right.
Same argument, and yet look what Daniel Day-Lewis did. And again, as Margaret Thatcher, she was very good. She had the accent down, she had the look down. She was terrific in the movie. But the movie itself, it wasn't really about anything. I mean, Margaret Thatcher was a tough woman. I mean, she went to war with the Falkland Islands. She kicked ass when she was prime minister. And you never really saw that. You saw a couple tough speeches in Parliament. You never really saw the obstacles she had to overcome because she was a woman. It focused more on her later years where she was struggling with dementia. And it was okay. I mean, she was good in it. I just don't think it's one of her best performances. I certainly don't think should have been the Oscar winner that year. That was a pretty big year for other women. And I think Streep, I don't know. I just don't believe she should have got it.
It almost seems weird when there's a year where Meryl Streep isn't nominated for something.
I remember there was a year, and somebody at the Academy Awards said, did Meryl not make a movie this year because she's nominated for everything she does? And they're almost right. She's been nominated for a few times and maybe shouldn't have been. Into the Woods was questionable, but she's such a brilliant actress. She goes the distance every time. It's tough not to honor her.
I'm a huge fan of Nancy Meyers movies, and It's Complicated has Alec Baldwin and Steve Martin and Meryl Streep, and I'm a big fan. What are your thoughts?
I liked it a lot. I thought it was absolutely delightful in every way. And I'm a big Alec Baldwin fan. I like Alec Baldwin when he's mean and nasty. And there's elements of that here, but he's also kind of cool. You know, it's kind of cool to watch two exes come back together and recapture the passion that they once had. And Steve Martin is a lovely actor, such a wonderful, warm actor. And he was terrific in the movie. And Streep, caught in between these two men, was delightful. Absolutely delightful. It's a fun movie. I think it's one of Nancy Meyer's best films. Something's Got to Give might have the edge on it, but I think it's right up there with her best work.
What would you say are the top 5 Streep performances off the top of your head?
Top of my head, Sophie's Choice, A Cry in the Dark, Out of Africa, Bridges of Madison County, and Julia and Julia.
Julia, I'm happy you said that because I'm really, really a big fan of that one.
She's great in it. I mean, she transformed into Julia Child, and that was a pretty formidable role for her. Physically, she was completely wrong for it, but they shot her to look hot, to look tall, and did a great job.
Meryl Streep, I sometimes put her opposite Daniel Day-Lewis, or on the same level of genius, but a stark contrast between them is that Daniel Day-Lewis has only made a handful of movies, and he seems to retire after every movie, and you know, it's a very, very short list, whereas Streep's work is so prolific and so vast. What do you think that says about them as actors?
I think Streep enjoys it more than Daniel Day-Lewis does. I think Daniel Day-Lewis tortures himself by his method, by getting it right. And I think it takes so much out of him emotionally and physically that he needs a break after every movie. The preparation he did for The Last of the Mohicans and My Left Foot and The Crucible and Lincoln was unbelievable. When he took the part of Lincoln, he told Steven Spielberg, I'm going to need a year to find the voice, just to find the voice. And he found it and was great. Streep loves acting. She lives for it. And I asked her when I interviewed her, I said, how do you consistently challenge yourself? And she said, I never found that to be the problem. I look for a role that strokes my soul. And so every part she's taken, with the exception of Mamma Mia, I think strokes her soul in some way. And she did Mamma Mia because she thought it would be fun. And I get that. Sometimes they want to make a movie just to have a good time. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think she needs to challenge herself each time out. I don't think she's ever surpassed Sophie's Choice. And that is remarkable. She was 28 years old when she made that film. And to be 28 years old and give the best performance in the history of the cinema is pretty damn fine. And to never surpass that is even more remarkable because she's been awfully good since. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The crucial scene in Sophie's Choice, how many takes did they do?
I think they did one. I think it was a single take. I could be wrong, but I think she nailed it on the first take. And the scream that she put in was her own. That was her own. She wasn't supposed to do that. Pakula wanted something else, and she thought that she should have a silent scream, and her daughter's scream should be the scream we hear on the track. And she was spot on, absolutely spot on. That look of horror when they take her daughter out of her arms, and she starts to crumble, she starts to fall apart, and she screams, and it's her daughter's voice we hear is shattering, absolutely shattering. I showed that film to a friend of mine, a young mother, and she'd never seen it before. She'd heard about it, and she was an actress, and she was knocked out. She could barely breathe when that scene was over. Tears coursing down her face, absolutely stunned by what she had seen. And that's the type of impact Meryl Streep can have when she's in the zone, and she's so often in the zone.
And that movie was just a combination of things that you see like as awards fodder. It's the physical transformation. It's not just the dialect, but learning 2 more languages. Like, for someone so prolific, I wonder how she has the time to prep for things.
She makes the time. She throws herself into it, and she makes the time. Most movies, when a movie's cast, the actors usually have 5 to 6 months to prepare. They know it's coming. It's very rare that they get a part one week and start the next week. It does happen. It has happened. But Streep usually gives herself some preparation time. She had 6 months to learn to play the violin and did it. She had 6 months to get her voice to a certain range in Mamma Mia, and she did it. And 6 months to do this and 6 months to do that. And she always does it. She hires her own coaches, and away they go, and they're just ready by the time they come to the set. She always knows her lines. She's always on time. She always knows her mark. She hits her mark, and she loves to improvise. When Clint Eastwood suggested they improvise in Madison County, she was in the zone. She dug that to no end because she's an actor. She likes to play. And when you have two great actors, and Clint Eastwood became a great actor over the course of time, you have two great actors like that bouncing off each other in a romance, you let him go. You turn him loose and let him go. And Eastwood said, the one thing I had to do with Meryl was learn when to be quiet, when to just let her go, when to not direct, because she's just that kind of actor. Brando had that too. Brando didn't need a lot from his directors. He said the best direction he ever got was from Francis Ford Coppola in the opening scene of The Godfather. And Coppola looked at him and said, less motion. That's all he said. And Brando knew exactly what he meant because he had the cat in his arms. And in the opening that they had shot, I guess he was caressing the cat constantly. And Coppola just said to him, less motion. And he said, that's the best direction he ever got. And Eastwood has said that Meryl Streep's like that. She doesn't need a lot of direction. And imagine a young director, imagine a young guy like yourself stepping onto a film set for the first time and you're going to direct Meryl Streep.
Right.
How do you do that? I mean, I've directed more than 40 plays and I wouldn't have a clue what to say to her. Not a clue what to say to her.
Can you imagine? It's like if she did something and it wasn't exactly your vision, it's like, what do you say? Am I going to tell her? You know,
you change your vision, I think is what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably the right choice.
Yes, she has to be right if that's what she's doing.
She's the character, and that's her belief. She's invested so much time in preparing the character. She's more than willing to listen to the director's interpretation and their vision. And she's like that Jack Nicholson that way. He'll follow the director, 100%. And he's done things that he didn't want to do because the director did. Streep has done that too, but she, with Oliver Stone and Eva Peron, she had very clear ideas about Evita, and she'd done the research. And Oliver Stone, all he would say is, I've done it too, I know my stuff, blah, blah, blah. And Streep said, but it's me that's got to do it, Oliver. And he would not give in. He just wouldn't give in.
Streep has, because of just how many films she's made, she has worked with a lot of different famous actors, and in recent years, those of a later generation.
Yes.
Can you imagine what it's like for someone to be on set with Meryl Streep, and what kind of effect does she have on her co-stars?
She intimidates the hell out of most of them. I remember talking to the ladies that were with her and Dancing at Lunasa, the Irish film she made, and they were terrified, absolutely terrified. They were a bunch of British stage actors who had not really made any major films. And they said the first day they walked on set, there's Meryl Streep. And they said it was like seeing God across the room. And then she did her first take and flubbed her line. And then did another take and flubbed her line. And finally, she said to the director, give me a few minutes, I'll get the goddamn thing right. And she did. And so they said, wow, she's human. And they could approach her. Everybody that's worked with her loves her. Jack Nicholson adored working with her. Denzel Washington, they worked together on The Manchurian Candidate. Said it was like going to acting school again. And he said, all I had to do was watch. And I was watching perfection. Everyone that has worked with her loves working with her. They say they learn so much. They come away with so much. Tommy Lee Jones cast her in a small part in his Western, The Homesman. And he said, as a director, I cast her and I walked away. All I had to do was aim the camera. And, that's what she brings to a film set. Her portrayal in The Manchurian Candidate, she modeled that character off of Hillary Clinton. And in that film, she's an evil woman. She's a villain through and through. And she took a lot of heat for modeling that on Hillary Clinton, but it was perfect. If you watch it, you can see Hillary in every scene. And it's alarming how she captures Hillary Clinton. If there's ever a Hillary Clinton bio, there you go, cast Streep.
Well, if there's a Teddy Roosevelt bio or any kind of bio, you could argue you could cast Meryl Streep.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of people have said, how long before she plays a man and wins Best Actor? Because she's just that fine.
Well, the rabbi in Angels in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you moving your computer around again, John?
Nope.
Okay. August Osage County. Now, there's an ensemble cast, again, of a lot of young actors. This movie, based on a play.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts? Because it's a lot of heavy hitters, and Streep is pretty intense.
She is intense, and this one hit me hard for obvious reasons. She plays a woman dying of cancer, and that's close to me. And I thought she captured it beautifully. She captures the anger of what this woman is going through, the fear of what's coming, the fear of the unknown for when she does breathe her last breath, the fact that she's leaving behind her family, even though she has issues with really all of them, she's going to leave them behind. And do they have the strength to carry on without her? And I thought everybody in the cast, especially Julia Roberts, rose to the occasion and really gave a terrific performance. Tracy Letts wrote the script to that and won the Pulitzer Prize. And a lot of people are getting to know him now as an actor. He was Henry Ford in Ford versus Ferrari this year. So he's becoming a very well-known actor. And he said it was Meryl Streep that gave him the courage to start acting. Go do it. Try it. See what you can do. You can sure write. So I thought she was great in the movie. She was nominated for an Oscar for it. Richly deserved. And I agree with you. It's a wonderful ensemble. I don't think there's a bad performance in that film. They're all wonderful.
Power ensemble, on that note, we were talking about this on the previous episode. We were talking about Tom Hanks, but The Post.
Yeah. She got an opportunity there to play Catherine Graham, another real-life character, a really important woman in terms of 70s newsmaking. Her husband committed suicide. He owned the Washington Post. She took it over. And this was when newspaper was very much a man's game. There were very few women reporters, women writers. There were certainly no women owners. But she took over the Post, and it went from being kind of a second, third-rate newspaper to a top-grade newspaper. She released the Pentagon Papers. She took a huge risk. She risked jail for herself and Ben Bradley by releasing those. Within a year, two reporters, Woodward and Bernstein, were onto Watergate. And she told Ben Bradley, follow it, stay with it. And he did. And it brought down Richard Nixon. He had to resign because of those Washington Post reporters. I thought the Post was badly shafted by the Academy. 2 nominations, Streep for Best Actress and Best Picture. I thought Spielberg should have been nominated. Hanks should have been nominated. It was absolutely spectacular and crisply written. It was taut. It was tight. We knew the ending, but he built such unbearable tension out of every scene in the film. And it was Streep and Hanks that brought that tension forth. And I thought Streep was spectacular as Catherine. I thought she was wonderful.
Are there any filmmakers that come to mind who Meryl hasn't worked with that you would like to see her collaborate with?
I would like to see her work with Woody Allen again, but she did not enjoy working with Woody Allen. And I'm not sure why. I think it was because she only got snippets of the script, a little bit of the script at a time, and she wanted the whole experience, and so she should. So I'd like to have that. I would have had that. I'd love to see her work with Scorsese. I think that would be astonishing, just to see those two minds together. I would have liked to see her work with Sidney Lumet before he died, because I think he was her kind of director. I thought her collaboration with Sidney Pollack with Out of Africa was a beautiful relationship. They loved each other. And he was a great woman's director. He just brought out the best in women. And he certainly did that with Streep. I'd like to see her work with women directors. Catherine Bigelow, I think, would be a great choice for Meryl Streep to work with. And younger filmmakers should work with her as well, because I think she could teach them a lot about acting. So many young directors walk on the film set and they think I'm in charge because I'm the director. Well, They better know everything about the camera, everything about the lighting, and they better know a lot about acting, or they're going to get eaten alive. And I think Streep could teach them quite a lot about the art of acting.
What's the newest film you've seen her in?
Wow, she hasn't really. I think The Post was the last thing I saw her in. The most recent film I've watched her in again, I watched Adaptation again recently, and it was, again, wonderful. But I think The Post was the last thing I saw her in where she was a lead actress. Into the Woods, and I didn't care for that. I didn't care for her performance in that either. But she's hard at work. She's got more things coming out this year.
Talk about him.
One of them I know absolutely nothing about, and it's being kept under wraps. I know that she's making a film where she plays a female scientist. That's all I know, and it's coming out later this year. She's got a couple of passion projects she's been working on. Rumor has it she wants to produce a movie based on Leni Riefenstahl, the great documentarian out of Germany that made those seminal documentaries for the Nazi Party, Triumph of the Will and Olympiad. And at one point in her career, I think she was asked to play Leni Riefenstahl, and she had something else going on out of Africa, I think. So she's busy. She's constantly busy and always will be. Her daughters are breaking into movies now and have done some interesting work. One of her daughters was in Ricky and the Flash with her, and they're not bad. But can you imagine being in the shadow of Meryl Streep?
I can't. It's unreal. Like, it's not just like having a famous actor as a parent, but it's like the most iconic actor ever.
Yeah, yeah. And Mamie Gummer is quite good. You know, she's done some decent work. She's done good work on TV, and she was very good in Ricky and the Flash. But I mean, will they ever step out of that shadow? I just can't think they ever will. It's pretty formidable.
It seems like an impossible obstacle to overcome.
I would agree. I would agree. It's like Brando's children. How could they ever live up to being the children of Marlon Brando? They didn't want to get into acting at all, but
And
they ended up being very confused, messed up kids.
I really like Colin Hanks, but
I do too. I thought he was great in Dexter when he played the bad guy, and he was terrific in King Kong. But again, that's a pretty big shadow to have to step out of, and very few sons do it. I think Liza Minnelli did it with her mother. I think she was tremendous in Cabaret. I think Michael Douglas has done it, but it doesn't happen very often.
any young actresses you see as maybe being the next Meryl Streep? Do you think there ever will be one?
I think Saoirse Ronan is probably the best bet we have to be what Streep is. I think Jessica Chastain has a lot of really great qualities. I wish she would work more, and I wish she would choose her films more carefully. I don't know what she was doing last year in X-Men, that awful X-Men film, Dark Phoenix, was that it?
It was, and I didn't even see that.
Oh, it was brutal. And Jessica Chastain, I love her. One of my favorite actresses was in it. And why do that to yourself? But I think of the young ones coming up. Saoirse Ronan is probably the best bet to be as good as Streep is. Natalie Portman could go that route. She's certainly talented enough and has done a lot of great work and might continue to grow and take challenges. And I think that's what they need to do, is take challenges. Streep challenged herself her whole career. Everything was a risk, and she never shied away from risks. At one point, they used to, in the 80s, there was a writer for the Toronto Sun who tormented her about being queen of the accents. And she finally sat down with him and she said, "Why should I play my entire life a housewife from New Jersey? Why not play a Danish writer? Why not play Margaret Thatcher? Why not play this character?" And she was absolutely right. She shut him down. And it was great to see because it was such a pompous, arrogant statement.
Honestly, like, it's kind of one of the cool ideas, at least from my perspective, about being an actor, is to get to do different voices and accents and stuff. But
Well, yeah, being an actor is to be other people, to create characters with what you have from the written word and yourself. And Streep has done that time and time and time again for nearly 50 years and done it better than anybody. And to insult her by calling her queen of the accents, I thought that was a shallow narrow-minded, stupid comment from a writer who had no business being a film critic.
You mentioned Manchurian Candidate, Hillary Clinton. Do we really want to talk about Meryl's opinions on current political issues?
I think she's made that pretty clear. She is not a fan of President Trump. She never has been. I doubt she ever will be. I thought her speech 2 years ago at the Golden Globes was classic, and it got under his skin because he was tweeting right away that the overrated Meryl Streep was chatting about him, and that just completely shows what a buffoon he is to call Meryl Streep overrated. You know, just a pompous ass that sits in that White House. She has fought tirelessly for women's rights, and that's probably what set her off with Donald Trump, is that he's such a misogynistic pig that she's appalled by him. She's worked endlessly for equality in Hollywood for women, equal pay, women behind the camera directing, women in more roles, writing and producing. She's all for that. And Donald Trump is not, clearly, is not for that. And I think she just is disgusted by him in every way.
You know, it's funny. I envisioned the inevitable biopic, presidential biopic, and I remember thinking to myself, to cast Donald Trump with any actor is the most impossible task, and he would be impossible to play. You can't do him over the top. You can't do him understated. There's nothing genuine about him. And like, maybe Meryl Streep would be the person to pull it off.
She might, or Alec Baldwin. I love what he's done on Saturday Night Live, and it would cast Alec Baldwin. You're sure to upset Trump because he's very upset by what Baldwin does. And Streep is a big champion of Alec Baldwin's impersonation of Trump. She's made that very clear, and she might be doing that just to annoy Trump. Who knows? She's very cautious about her politics. She's never lived in Hollywood. She's had a house in Hollywood, but she always lived in Connecticut and wanted to raise her kids away from Hollywood, away from the politics of Hollywood, and lives 2 doors down from Ron Howard and his family. She once attacked a paparazzi who was taking pictures of her children. She attacked him, knocked him down in the lobby of a movie theater, and started kissing him. You know, so he couldn't say she was assaulting him. She was kissing him on the face, and just saying to him as she kissed him, "Don't take pictures of my kids. Stop. I'll pose. I'll sign for you, but don't shoot my kids." And very little was known about her children. You know, we'd see them once in a while with her at the Oscars until they were grown. And even her husband, Donald Gummer, the sculptor, is quite famous in the art world. But even he was very secretive about the kids and what they did and how they were growing up. It was kind of a surprise when people realized Mamie Gummer was Meryl Streep's daughter. So she's, you know, very intensely private. Even interviewing her, you know, there was some topics were just off base, and you didn't bring them up. And it's just polite to do that.
Is there anything, I mean, she's done so much and been so many different characters. Is there anything we haven't seen that you'd like to see as far as a portrayal goes or a character?
Yeah, a couple for me. I would love to see Meryl Streep play Amanda Wingfield in The Glass Menagerie. She's the right age, finally. I think she would bring to it reservoirs of despair and yet hope that Amanda has. And I'd love to see her play Mary in Long Day's Journey into Night, the Eugene O'Neill play. Katharine Hepburn knocked that out of the park in 1962 when there was a Canadian film with Martha Henry made in the 90s. But I think Streep is closing in on being the right age to play Mary Tyrone, and I think it would be remarkable to see her play those two characters before she hangs it up or stops working, whatever, on film, not on stage, on film, because I'm not sure she could go back to the stage now. She's been away from it for so long. So I'd love to see her play those two characters. And yeah, I would like to see her play Hillary Clinton in a biography. I think it'd be interesting. And would she play her as hard-edged as she did in Manchurian Candidate? Probably not, because that was a specific character. But it would be a fascinating character study from her.
Well, this brings me to the all-important question. How long you think before she does a superhero movie?
I don't think she will.
Yeah?
So there.
Yeah, you may be right.
I don't think she will. I think Meryl Streep has always been, with the exception of Mamma Mia, all about the art. And she made Mamma Mia to have fun, no other reason. I don't think she would have fun on a superhero movie. I know that when she made the Jim Carrey film of Count Orloff, I don't think she enjoyed the whole special effects and green screen business. She wasn't crazy about that. And superhero films are a lot of green screen and a lot of visual effects. So
they don't necessarily have to be. Look at Joker.
Well, that's true. That's true. But that was a very different type of superhero movie. I think that broke ground as a new genre almost. But I don't think it'll happen, Nick. I'm sorry. I don't think she
No, hey, that's fine. You may be right. But
she might. I could be dead wrong. She might show up as Martha Kent in a new Superman movie someday. But I doubt it. I doubt it.
It just, the term superhero or comic book movie is such it's not a useful descriptor, really, to group all the movies together. It's more of a framing device, because look at Joker, Guardians of the Galaxy, Superman, and Captain America, the Winter Soldier. They're all comic book superhero movies. They have nothing in common.
Yeah, that's a whole other show.
It is.
And we'll do it. We'll do it. And we'll reverse. I'll interview you.
Looking forward to that. For our listeners, do you think there's anything important we should know about Meryl Streep that we haven't discussed today?
I think people mistake actors often for being flaky. And I know a lot of actors that are flaky. But Meryl Streep is laser smart, whip smart, the kind of intellect I encountered when I interviewed Warren Beatty. Absolutely off the chart, brilliant. But she does not take herself seriously. She's funny. She's got a dirty sense of humor, and she loves to laugh. Loves to laugh. And the person she laughs most at is herself. It really is. It really is. She was an absolute pleasure to meet. Absolute pleasure. One of the highlights of my life. Right up there with Scorsese.
There it is, folks. Episode number 4, Meryl Streep. Thanks for everyone who's been tuning in. John and I are trying to bang these episodes out quick time. It's been more frequent than just once a week, so stay tuned. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up. We're going to be talking about Jack Nicholson, Francis Ford Coppola, the 1970s as a decade, I know, is going to be the subject of a future podcast. Lots of cool stuff coming up, guys. You got any suggestions for us? Anything you'd like to see on the site? Anything you'd like to hear on this podcast? Find us at footandfriendsonfilm.com. You can find us on Facebook, Foot and Friends on Film, Instagram. Google it. Like and subscribe. All that good stuff. Until next time, see you at the movies.